Tonight, we bring you a special episode of Golden Eagle Sports Report.
With football season just about to kick off, we present Golden Eagle Sports Report Fantasy Football Special.
Thank you for joining us. This edition of Golden Eagle Sports Report starts right now.
Slam! Dunk! Oh, that's a poster.
Live from the Jeannie Hayes Virtual Studio at Marquette University, this is Golden Eagle Sports Report.
Marquette gets the rebound, and the champions have gone down.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Baltz, joined by Brian Wilson.
Every year in fantasy, everyone always goes with their go-to guy that they pick in every single league. So, Matt, who are you taking without hesitation in every single draft you have this year?
I'm taking Emeka Egbuka of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, Brian. Listen, Egbuka, he's in an interesting spot. He's a rookie, right? We all know that rookies, it's give or take, right? You never know. You know, some could end up like Justin Jefferson, and some could end up like others, you know, that have struggled in the past. So my thing with Egbuka right now is, look, he's a rookie with high upside. There's a lot of reports that come out that he can run inside and out. In a system where they throw the ball a lot too, you know, you've got Chris Godwin on the shelf right now. You've got Jalen McMillan on the shelf right now. So there's an opportunity for him to step in as a wide receiver too in a, you know, pass-heavy offense down there in Tampa, led by Baker, who's been throwing the ball very well as of recently. He's got a real opportunity to step in as a wide receiver too and really make an impact. Another note on Egbuka is he is the all-time receptions leader at Ohio State. And if you think about some of the names that have come out of Ohio State, right, some of the receivers that they've produced, that's a pretty big deal. So in a PPR league, especially points per reception, you could see Egbuka, you know, he can rack, you know, receptions up in a hurry, and that can be very beneficial to you in a PPR league. So that's one of my must takes, in my opinion, is Emeka Egbuka.
I like that pick, and I like how you kind of compared to at Ohio State. He was behind Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's going to be kind of similar with Mike Evans in Tampa Bay. So I like where you're going. I'm going to go Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. I think he's going to have a really big season this year. This is his fourth year in the NFL. He has continued to improve every single year, had 14 touchdowns, and in fantasy, those touchdowns are what matters. And the Rams really use him in a lot of goal line situations because you get 100 yards, that's really only 10 points. So the way he's able to score touchdowns, and I think he's going to end up being the NFL league leader in rushing this year and is really going to help the Rams, especially with Matthew Stafford. He didn't really play a lot, if at all, in the preseason, so we really don't know. He is going to start week 1 against the Houston Texans, but we don't know how hurt he's going to be, and is Mike LaFleur and Sean McVay going to try to use Kyren early, and I think he's going to be a consistent factor this year, and is why the Rams, in a lot of people's opinion, is going to be the dark horse in the NFC.
Right, and when you think about the Rams too, I mean, obviously you mentioned Stafford in the preseason, struggled, you know, he's had the back problems. Also, another thing is like Kupp's gone, right? So Kupp, you've got Devontae Adams, supremely talented receiver, but like how much are they going to be able to rely on Devontae Adams early on? Like you just don't know, like where are him and Stafford's, are they going to be on the same page? Like it's kind of hard to, you know, get those guys used to new offense. The one constant you have is obviously Puka Nacua is an absolute stud, right? But then Kyren Williams, I mean, the guy, his red zone usage is insane. It feels like every time they get down by the goal line or inside the 10, you think Kyren's going to score. He gets a lot of dump-offs too. So, like, once again, if you're in a PPR league, which I think is pretty standard for most people, he gets a lot of receptions, and those points just rack up. I mean, we're talking 3, 4, 5 receptions a game, which can ultimately help. And I like your take that he will lead the league in yards this year because he's a workhorse. He's a dog. And as a Notre Dame fan, no bias, but he is an absolute dog, and it's been crazy to see kind of his progression and his come up. But yeah, I think you're right. He's a must-have. I can completely agree with that.
It's that usage. Kyren Williams will continue to get those goal line touches, like you were saying. You hit it right on the head, Matt, and of course Brian too. It's not just the usage though, but a player that I'm actually looking at is actually going to be Cincinnati Bengals running back Chase Brown. You want to talk about usage? This running back enters now his third season as a total workhorse for the Bengals. Last year, the Illinois product totaled over 1,500 yards from scrimmage, despite only starting in 10 games. Now, Chase Brown has been dominant when he gets the ball. And that offense is super high-powered. The O-line may not necessarily be the greatest. That defense may not be the greatest, but that all plays factors. We got to consider the game script that Chase Brown is going to be facing for a majority of this year. You talk about Kyron Williams getting dump-offs. My goodness, did Chase Brown get dump-offs. It was insane. What do you guys think about Chase Brown this year?
I like Chase Brown. I just haven't seen a lot of consistency that I've seen with some other running backs at the top of a lot of people draft board. And when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins out there, there's a boatload of weapons. But I think he has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see what he can do this season for Cincinnati in fantasy-wise, and just with the Bengals' offensive line being atrocious, kind of how that's going to impact the Bengals for a team who wants to go back to a Super Bowl. Chase Brown will have to be a big factor in that, and I'm excited to see kind of what he's going to do this season for them.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that a little bit, my main thing with Chase Brown is that it felt like the Bengals for so much of last year were playing from behind, right? And that when you're playing from behind, you're not necessarily going to be running the ball as much. And like Adrian said, he did get a lot of dump-offs. It's very similar to Kyron. I just think that with all the questions on defense, and like Brian also kind of said, the inconsistencies at times, I'd be a little bit cagey on qualifying him as a must draft in my book, but I can see why people would, because in the 10 games he did play, like you said, 1,500 yards in 10 games, outrageous. 150 yards a game. What?
10 starts.
10 starts, excuse me. But still outrageous numbers and like the amount of volume that he was getting just in terms of like games played. So I'd be a little nervous just in terms of like their defense and how much they're going to be playing from behind. And like Brian said, how much are you really going to be throwing out the ball down the field then with Higgins and Chase? But yeah, I mean, still, Chase Brown's a really good player.
I mean, the Bengals also did get rid of Zach Moss this offseason, brought in little to no competition for Chase Brown. But anyways, let's move on to our top 5 running backs heading into this fantasy season. And starting us off at number 5, we have Falcons running back Bijan Robinson. He's been nothing but great since being drafted 8th overall out of Texas. And now he is looking to continue that. The loss of Caleb McGarry is a little scary for the Texas product, but it's Bijan Robinson. He is a fantastic runner. He will get all those touches, especially in the end zone. So I think Bijan is the clear RB1 this year. There's one guy that I think could maybe pass him, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I think Bijan is a great pick. Another thing there, and like this might become a recurring theme with me, but then again, it's like it's the Falcons. You don't know exactly what you're going to get from them defensively. They've got some guys, Simmons. They've got some good players, but at the end of the day, you think about where they're at on defense, and you start to wonder, how much are they going to be really running the ball. But Bijan's a beast. I think everybody knows that. I think he's a slam dunk pick anytime you can get him. But yeah, that's my main thing too. And also their quarterback situation that might also help Bijan. It's like Penix, I think, still supposed to start, I believe. He played at the end of last year, but you don't really know. Now as a full season starter, you don't really know what you're going to get out of him. So maybe that benefits Bijan, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe he turns into more of a gunslinger and they really let it fly. We don't know. They've got a solid receiving core: Drake London, Darnell Mooney, among other guys. So who knows what really happens down there? It feels like Atlanta's always kind of in limbo. We really haven't seen them be consistently a good team since Matt Ryan was there. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think you can't forget they do have a really good number 2 guy. Obviously, Tyler Algier is not taking away carries for the most part from Bijan Robinson, but that's something you could see if Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, their offensive coordinator, feels like, hey, this gives us a really good opportunity to win, to really use 2 backs on a consistent basis. And Bijan has come out and said, I'm fine with giving some of my touches to Tyler Algier. We're trying to go win. So that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Bijan's a great guy. He was amazing at Texas and has been a huge impact and worth that top-end pick for Atlanta. When some of their other top-end picks like Kyle Pitts have not shown up, Bijan has been that guy for them. So when you come to fantasy, it's all about consistency, and that's a guy that really should be at the number 1 spot because you know how consistent he can be.
Yeah, Bijan, I mean, you brought up the uncertainty with Michael Penix. Obviously, there's a lot of question marks with Michael Penix, but we still saw a good workload and good fantasy outcomes for Bijan, even when Michael Penix took over the starter. But now moving in at number 2, we have Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs. the former Alabama runner, has been electric since being drafted and looks to continue that spark this season. He put up over 1,900 total yards last season. And, I mean, yes, David Montgomery's there. Because if you're saying that Tyler Algier has competition with Bijan, David Montgomery is easily a better RB2. I think we can agree on that. Yet, I mean, the offensive scheme is practically built around Jahmyr Gibbs at this point, it feels like. Even with the departure of Ben Johnson, there's a lot of question marks. Frank Ragnow retiring is also a huge loss for the Lions' offensive line. But I still think Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to be that RB2. If not, I could see him being that RB1 if that offense is really tailored towards him. So I think this is the year that Jahmyr Gibbs even goes nuclear.
Let's just clarify. I'm not saying Tyler Algier is taking away carries. He's just going to be a huge impact with Atlanta, I think, if they use both of them correctly. With Jahmyr Gibbs, like you said, you mentioned Ben Johnson. That's what concerns me with Detroit altogether, is I think they have a really good team this year. But let's not forget what Philly did a couple years ago when they lost both their coordinators. They were terrible. So that's what concerns me about Detroit. And you have David Montgomery, who, when they both had amazing seasons last year, something we really haven't seen from two running backs. And then the offense for Detroit was insane, and that's why they were 15-2. But again, when it came down to it, they couldn't get it done when it mattered in the playoffs. But I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. I like his explosiveness. He's a guy that he can touch the ball and take it to the house on every single play, and that's what makes him dangerous. But I like him at that 2 spot just because of that two-headed monster in Detroit.
I think quickly that Gibbs is an unbelievable player. I think you're just due to naturally see some regression from Detroit's offense, if that makes sense. Obviously, you lose Ben Johnson. They lose Ragnow. 1,900 yards is so many, and like they had a historic year last year. I mean, you get 2 receivers, Williams and St. Brown, go for 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards each. You get Laporta going for over 700. David Montgomery and Jahmyr, like they were unstoppable. So I think you're just naturally due for some regression, as well as like Brian mentioned, you lose your offensive coordinator. I mean, he's the mastermind behind a lot of that stuff, and it's not to say that the guy behind him wasn't learning, right, or whoever they brought in. But at the end of the day, I think you're just due to see some natural progression, and also 1,900 yards for a guy, and for Montgomery too. For as much like of a workload that they put on those guys, like wear and tear at some point becomes a factor, especially with a guy like Gibbs who like relies on so much of like his quickness and his shiftiness and his ability to move and get around defenders. So I don't know. I think you're just due to naturally see some some regression from the offense, if that makes sense. I still like Gibbs. I would still take him, but I think too, just for me at this point, feels a little high just because of, I think we've already seen the best from him, just to be honest with you.
Wow. The best from Jahmyr Gibbs.
That's best statistical season you'll see from him. I think that maybe there's more in store, but I just think last year was so crazy for them.
It really was an insane season. The season that they should have made the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But Lions fans will have to wait another season to wait for that. And continuing on, we have Eagles star running back Saquon Barkley. You want to talk about a historic season. After a historic season from Saquon Barkley, the only thing preventing him from being number one is probably his age. Last season, the former Giant rushed just over 2,000 yards for the first time in a season, for his first season in green. And Saquon, the offensive line of the Eagles and offensive scheme in general is great. The Eagles love to run that ball down their opponent's throat. Like, they will continue to run the ball. And Saquon will look to get all those carries and touchdown red zone touches, even despite the tush pushes. Now, Saquon, like we mentioned, it's that age. He's getting up there in age. And Saquon has dealt with injuries in the past, but he's so dynamic of a runner. The upside alone, you have to take it. I mean, last year is proof of that.
Yeah, look, Saquon Barkley is unbelievable. 2,000 yards on the ground. I mean, that's just like it's dang near unheard of. I mean, it's ridiculous. And as you sit there and watch the Eagles, you just realize how like unstoppable it feels like their O-line is. Obviously, you have the tush push, which there's a lot of controversy around. But here's the thing for everyone out there: it's here to stay. It didn't get banned, so you're gonna see it over and over. And the tush push, Barkley running behind one of the best offensive lines of football, it all just feels almost unfair. Like it almost feels like you're watching Brady with the Patriots again, where it's like it feels like you're helpless when you're watching it. You know what I mean? Like if you're a Cowboys fan, if you're a Giants, if you're a fan of an opposing team playing the Eagles, like you almost have to feel like helpless at this point because it's just they've built this thing into such a monster in terms of like the O-line is so good. Hurts is such a threat to like take the ball and run himself, right? Like he's just the whole thing is unbelievable. And then of course Saquon's ability himself, he probably had one of the most iconic plays we've seen in years, maybe since the Odell catch, honestly, with that backward hurdle. Saquon's a freak of nature himself, and then you throw him behind what he's running behind and has to his side at QB. Like I said, the unfair is the word that comes to mind, just in terms of like you feel helpless watching it as an opposing fan.
Yeah, and it's just like you can't expect him to do the thing he did last year. And Philly has a great team, don't get me wrong. And I don't want to, when we're talking about these guys, just act like, oh, this is why we don't like them. But I think Saquon had a really good year when the Giants went to the playoffs. And then after that, obviously the Giants' offensive line is not Philly's offensive line. But he struggled. And it's just when you do that, when you're the age he is, when you're doing that much on the ground and your offense relies on you, it's like, if we're being honest, at the running back position, there's a higher chance of an injury. And when you see a guy tackled, you always think, hopefully they don't get hurt. And so I'm just kind of concerned just for Philly, again, to try to use him the way he was used, because I think that can lead to injury. And it also helps you have Devontae Smith. You have A.J. Brown. You have Dallas Goedert. You have a really veteran offense. The defense is a little questionable for Philly, but that's not the point of this. I think Saquon has the potential to have another great year, but you also have to look at a realistic side, and he's going to take, if he doesn't take a drop-off, that's the two greatest seasons put together we've probably ever seen. If he played the last week of the season, he would have broken Eric Dickinson's all-time rushing record in a season. So you can't expect him to do the same thing. He's going to fall off just because naturally you can't do that again.
I mean, yeah, Saquon. But if there is any player to do it behind that offensive line, it is Saquon Barkley. Let's be honest. But now at number 4, CMC remains in the top 5, and for good reason. Despite an injury-riddled 2024 season, reports say that this is the healthiest CMC has ever been. So if you want to bank on upside, you have to roll with CMC. I mean, that Niners offense, I said that the Lions offense runs through the Gibbs. This Niners offense, when McCaffrey's healthy, really, really runs through McCaffrey. Brock Purdy and McCaffrey's connection and chemistry is great immediately. And the weapons in that team are also a little concerning. I mean, when you're starting off with Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, CMC is going to get a lot of dump-offs this year, assuming he's healthy. That's the big if. And that's a recurring theme that we have with a lot of running backs in the top 5 so far.
Yeah, and I think overall this preseason CMC has been very healthy, but there was reports per Adam Schefter of ESPN that he is dealing with an Achilles right before the season starts, like an Achilles sort of injury, so that's kind of something you are concerned about, and the trade for Brian Robinson. You're not trading for Brian Robinson this late into the preseason if you aren't concerned a little bit, and that scares me as somebody. If you're going to be drafting CMC that high, why are you going to go trade for a running back of Brian Robinson's caliber if you're not concerned about those injuries?
I feel like the Brian Robinson trade could be a little more insurance-y, maybe not, I don't know. We obviously really won't know because John Lynch and Shanahan are the only ones that really know what their thought process is. Quickly though, I just want to say that the reports, I don't really believe in these healthiest he's ever been reports. It feels like we always hear about this with certain players, like he's in the best shape of his life, right? And then it's like, okay, you don't really see that much of a difference. Look, when CMC's on the field, he's arguably one of the greatest fantasy performers ever. I think anyone could agree. His Carolina days, unbelievable. But honestly, on offense, it's scaring me a little bit of how much it starts to feel. Obviously, it's not to that extent, but like Adrian said, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, we're talking about an offense that has lost a lot. You have George Kittle, who's a nice security blanket, but I do worry a little bit about the workload that's going to be placed on him. And when you add the workload that he's going to have this year on top of his injury history, it feels a little cagey to me and a little bit not almost a recipe for disaster. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with CMC. But obviously, when he's on the field, fantasy all-time great.
Yeah, CMC isn't the sexiest pick, but again, it's CMC. At some point, you have to bank on that upside because if he's healthy, he could very easily be a top 3 running back this season, and that's the truth. Most of these guys can. That's why they're in the top 5. And closing out our top 5, we have the rookie Raider, Ashton Jeanty. The term generational is thrown a lot around these days, but wow, Jeanty checked these boxes. The 6th overall pick is lined up to be the bell cow in the new and improved Raiders offense, led by Geno Smith. And I mean, we saw Brock Bowers break out with the Raiders last year. I think the Raiders are just doing all the right things, and getting a guy like Jeanty is just going to be so good for that offense. Geno Smith, too, having an actual quarterback in that offense along with an actual running back in that offense. The O-line's a little questionable, don't get me wrong, but Ashton Jeanty is going to be the complete workhorse. He's going to get literally everything in that offense because we all know that Zamir White isn't doing anything if he's even still on the team. But yeah, Ashton Jeanty is going to be a total bell cow this year.
Yeah, here's my thing is the O-line's a big question for me. I've personally stayed away from Jeanty in a lot of my drafts. With a rookie, you just don't really know. Obviously, his physicals and like all his intangibles, like unbelievable off the charts. Is the reason like he was picked so high. But yeah, my question is like, can they get him in space enough? Because obviously between the tackles, we don't really know what that's going to look like. Obviously, no offense to the Mountain West, but like running at NFL D lines and Mountain West D lines, there's a big difference. So like we're gonna really get to see like what he looks like against NFL defenses and what he looks like between the tackles. Because once you get him out in space, I mean, there's no question the guy's unbelievable. And he can really make some guys miss, and really, he can break long yards. He can yards after contact. He can break long runs. But my question is really like, how good is he going to be behind a Raiders offensive line that we really don't know, like how they're going to perform?
Yeah, and to kind of bounce off the Mountain West thing, we saw how he played against Penn State in the playoff. Like it was okay. Like it wasn't great compared to what he has been doing, and that's more of like. Is more Penn State guys like you have Abdul Carter who's on the Giants, like he led that defense. So those are kind of when you go play top of the end Big Ten, top of the end SEC, those are the guys that are going to be those NFL guys. And he's been when you're playing against second-string, third-string guys in preseason, I would hope as a 6th overall pick you would be running to the end zone. So that's what concerns me about Ashton Jeanty. And then the workload he had at Boise State then coming into the NFL is he's coming into the NFL as a guy who is a workhorse. So you can look at that as, oh, he's done this before. But you can also look at it as he's done that before and what can he continue to do that. So that's just what concerns me. I like Ashton Jeanty, and I like the impact Tom Brady is bringing to the Raiders. And I think this is a team that with Pete Carroll is a team that you want to watch out for. And they're probably the team that people are overlooking in that division with Denver, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. But Pete Carroll loves to run the ball. He had Marshawn Lynch. We know what happened there. So this is something that I think Ashton Jeanty could be a really big impact player because he's going to be playing a position that Pete Carroll loves to use.
Absolutely. Like you said, Pete Carroll loves running the ball. We've seen it before in Seattle, so we'll see what it looks like in Las Vegas. Anyways, coming up, what sleeper picks are we targeting this year?
Plus, we break down our top 5 receivers for the year.
Stick around for all that and more after this quick break. And welcome back to Golden Eagle Sports Report. Once again, I'm Matt Balch, joined by Brian Wilson and Adrian Fraga. We now move to some of our biggest sleeper picks for the upcoming season. So, Brian, I'm going to start with you. What diamonds in the rough are you targeting on your fantasy football draft board this season?
I'm going to go with Nick Chubb. He's entering his 8th season from Georgia. This offseason, he made a move from the Cleveland Browns to the Houston Texans, and a lot of people are like, Nick Chubb? He did miss like half of the last 2 seasons due to that gruesome ACL and MCL injury versus the Pittsburgh Steelers early in the 2023 season. But I just like what he's going to bring to the Houston Texans. Just the ability to run the football and be a guy like Joe Mixon was a really receiving back. This Nick Chubb, when he's healthy, is a huge impact player, and we've seen he can win people fantasy games and even come big in the playoffs. And just in the beginning of the season, sometimes you just don't know. And I think he's a guy you can get in like the very end of your draft, if not off the waiver wire. I think Nick Chubb, with him being the number 1 guy until Mixon comes back, I'm excited to see what he can bring to C.J. Stroud and that Houston Texans team, who really, with the injury to Tank Dell, losing Stephon Diggs, we really don't know. So I think they are going to run the football a lot, and it starts with Nick Chubb. for the Houston Texans.
I agree with that. I also am excited to see him with a new fresh start. Obviously, Cleveland was a dumpster fire, so I'm excited to see what he gets with a new fresh start and a much better offense than he was in last year. Myself, I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals. Look, Marvin Harrison, everybody knows what he was coming out of Arizona, or coming out of Ohio State, excuse me, right? Everyone knew what he was. He was this superstar, like very highly touted receiver. I think the consensus was that he kind of disappointed last year in his rookie season at Arizona, if that makes sense. But I think he's due for a big breakout second year. I think he's going to prove himself as one of the main parts of the Cardinals' offense this season. Now, look, last year, I'm going to break down a couple numbers for you. Last year, 4th in red zone targets, okay? Another thing was that 41% of the balls that he received were deemed uncatchable statistically. So that tells you a little bit about maybe why he wasn't able to haul some of his targets in. Reports at a camper that he gained a lot of muscle this season, gained some weight, so that's going to improve, A, his yards after contact and yards after catch, and B, it's also going to improve his contested catch percentage, you would think, right? That's what that would translate to. So look, if Kyler can stay on the field, stay healthy this season, get more time, he's had a full offseason to now develop more chemistry with his wide receiver one. If all this can kind of come together, I think you're due to see some positive regression from Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think for that reason, that's a guy who I think a lot of people are sleeping on this year, but I think he's going to show up big.
It's just that offensive scheme for me. Marvin Harrison Jr., we know the talent is there. Absolutely. He was the first overall receiver taken in last year's, what's probably going to be a historic receiver draft class. And, Marvin Harrison Jr. has the build. He has the size. I just do not like that offensive scheme. I do not like Kyler Murray at quarterback. I've kind of lost faith in the Kyler Murray ship. But I still think the talent is there, especially for where he's being going. Like you said, he's still getting these targets. He's still getting these receptions. He still cracked 900 yards last year, despite what people were saying, having a disappointing season. And I feel like that also has to do with the reason that he was drafted in the 2nd round of a lot of fantasy drafts last year, whereas this year he's going more towards the 5th round, the 4th round or so. So a much more lenient, calm draft position. So, as a wide receiver too, I think it's a great pick. And I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is due for that second-year breakout, because that second-year breakout, it's real. It's a real thing, and a lot of receivers are following trail. And now a guy with tons of upside this season is Calvin Ridley of the Titans. Last season, Calvin Ridley saw 120 targets and now should have a quarterback upgrade in Cam Ward. He also has little to no competition this year and is looking to be a target demon once again for the Tennessee Titans. Calvin Ridley, like we mentioned, Cam Ward, still question marks. Rookie, obviously. First overall pick. But, when you're comparing Cam Ward to Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, I think you can say you got a quarterback upgrade. And one of the good things about Cam Ward, at least for Calvin Ridley, is Cam Ward is really comfortable throwing the ball. He doesn't care how tight the window is. He will try and force it through. That's the beauty of Cam Ward that I think is going to translate really nicely with Calvin Ridley. It's just that those targets, even if it's a tough target, it's going to go to Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to be getting well over 90 receptions this season. I could see him leading the year in receptions, because that lack of receiving help, along with the upgrade, I think Calvin Ridley is set for a big season.
Yeah, quickly for me, I think watching Cam Ward kind of reminds me of watching Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay. Like, it's probably not going to be to that extent. I don't know if we'll ever see a starting QB get to that extent ever again. But it kind of reminds me of that. My only question is, like you mentioned, Ridley is the only guy really that you feel like, I don't know, that you feel like is a threat in that receiving core almost. And maybe that's a bit of an over exaggeration, but I wonder how much he's going to get covered. How much defense is going to realize okay, this is the one guy we got to take out of the equation, right? For now, unless somebody breaks out. So I don't know. I wonder how much defense is going to pay attention to him, but we'll see. I agree with your pick. Cam Ward loves throwing the ball.
Yeah, and then Brian Callahan, he did a great job with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, and the way he runs his offense, you can see glimpses in quarterbacks he has had before, and I think that's really going to help Cam Ward. That's a perfect, head coach / play caller marriage with Cam Ward. But like you said, Matt, I'm a little concerned about their only real weapon being Ridley, and also just being a rookie. Just seeing defenses for scheme for the first time that you're like, I have no clue what's happening, that also concerns me with every rookie quarterback, not just Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Ridley is like that. Okay, for as good as it can be that he's the only receiver on that real receiver on that offense, like you said, bearing a breakout. That does mean that he's going to be covered and offenses are going to be schemed more towards Calvin Ridley. But that's why I also think the Titans are going to rely a lot more on the run game, hopefully open up that passing game through play action. I think that's a real possibility with the lack of receiving weapons and just Cam Ward being a rookie. But now let's take a look at some wide receivers. And the obvious choice at our number 1 point is Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase is the number 1 pick for a good reason. He's a focal point of this Bengals offense and a constant target. It's no surprise that he leads these rankings. The 2024 Triple Crown winner has a great chance of repeating as a wide receiver 1, assuming that Burrow stays healthy. And, I mean, we've seen it every year since his rookie year. Ja'Marr Chase has been lightning to Joe Burrow's thunder. Their chemistry, it's probably the best in the league. I don't think it's a hot take at all. And I think as long as those two are still on that team together, I think that Ja'Marr Chase is a lock to be the wide receiver 1.
Yeah, there's not really much to say. I think Ja'Marr is going to have a huge season and could repeat that Triple Crown season from a year ago.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch what him and Burrow have been able to do. And it feels like defenses know it's coming, but he just still finds a way to get open and make people miss and, double him. It doesn't matter. And, the clear thing, I think for a while it was like, is it Ja'Marr Chase or Justin Jefferson, right? And I think Ja'Marr has just been able to distance himself because Jefferson cannot stay in the field, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit. But Jefferson's had a lot of injury problems. So Ja'Marr right now I think is the best receiver in the league. It's not even a question, both in fantasy and on the field. Sometimes that can differ, obviously, as we all know. But, yeah, I mean, it's been unbelievable. Like Brian said, there's not really much else you could say. You just look at the Triple Crown and you're like, okay.
Yeah, the LSU connection will continue to shine, I'm sure. And now number 2, where CeeDee Lamb actually jumps Justin Jefferson and looks to bounce back. With Dak missing a majority of the last season, 88 now has his QB1 back and will be a force this season. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is another one of these receivers that's just so dynamic. He's easily considered a top 5 receiver in the league. And that Cowboys offense is certainly interesting. There are a couple question marks now with the departure of McCarthy and now the new head coach. But, I mean, it's still CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott and his chemistry is also fantastic. He's going to get that ball a lot as well. So, I mean, again, kind of similar to Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow. As long as those two are healthy, I think that they are bound for a top 3 fantasy wide receiver season.
Yeah, CeeDee's another one of these guys, man, where it's just like he feels like he gets so many targets, and no matter what you do defensively, he gets open. He gets receptions, and we're just in an era of NFL wide receivers where these guys are able to do so much, whether it's, run a quick slant on a 3rd down to pick up a 1st down or just, run a streak down the field and get absolutely open for a bomb, right? They're able to do so much, and CeeDee is so supremely talented. And when you've got a guy throwing like Dak, throwing to you, which, I know Dak gets his hate, but at the end of the day, he's still a top half quarterback in the NFL. Like, that's what it is. And he's good and he can throw the ball. So, CeeDee, I think as well, just prime for another great year.
Yeah, and I think with Brian Schottenheimer was already in Dallas, I think it really continues what Mike McCarthy was doing. I don't think, and again, his father is Marty Schottenheimer, legendary NFL offensive mind. So I think just that's going to help CeeDee. And then when you have your guy and not just like Andy Dalton or someone else, like your guy's back, you're looking and like licking your chops to go after these defenses, and he's going to have a big season.
Yeah, moving on to our 3rd spot, we actually have what we previously mentioned, Justin Jefferson. The face of the Vikings remains a talent in that Vikings team, averaging over 1,500 yards receiving last season. But there are some question marks now this season with Justin Jefferson, a little similar to last year, obviously, with the new quarterback. Sam Darnold obviously not being the most poised good quarterbacks in the NFL entering last season, proving everyone wrong, having a fantastic season, and Justin Jefferson as well having a great season. But I think that having J.J. McCarthy start as essentially a rookie with little to no experience, I think that's going to backfire a little bit. And Justin Jefferson is still going to have a great season, don't get me wrong. He's still going to get those targets. He's still going to get those receptions easily. It's just I think he's going to be a little worse than he was last year.
I actually like JJ. I think a lot of people are like, well, it's a new quarterback. Sam Darnold had a great season. Why are you letting him walk out the door? when you have Kevin O'Connell as your head coach, I think a lot of teams, if we just redrafted head coaches, he'd be top 3 picks somewhere else. So I think if you're a Vikings fan, that makes you very confident. What Kevin O'Connell did to Sam Darnold, no one thought was even possible. So I think that's going to be fine in Minnesota with JJ. And Justin Jefferson, the other JJ, is going to have a great season. And then bringing Adam Thielen back into Minnesota, I think, takes the pressure off with the Addison suspension. And I think Jefferson's going to be right back up there with Jamar Chase by season's end.
I'm a little nervous about Jefferson, I'll be honest with you. I think that his injury history, which he hadn't had much coming into the NFL, but now in the NFL he's struggled with injuries a couple years in a row. That worries me a little bit. And then in terms of just quarterback play, like we said, we don't really know what we're getting out of J.J. McCarthy. We know the type of player he was at Michigan, and he definitely wasn't the type of guy that was slinging the ball around. That there's a lot of running in that offense. So in the NFL, you got to be able to throw the football. I mean, we've seen that so many times. Don't even get me started as a Bears fan how many times I've seen that you need to throw the football to be successful. Still waiting on a 4,000-yard passer. I'm worried about J.J. McCarthy's ability to throw the football. I agree with Brian. Like Kevin O'Connell, it's a big moment for him to be able to sit there and he's had success with Kirk Cousins and with Matt Stafford, and then in LA, and now he's had it with Sam Darnold. So it's like, will that continue with J.J. McCarthy? I just don't know, but we're gonna see. We're gonna find out real quick, and I'm a little nervous about Jefferson for that reason, but still a top 5 receiver. Obviously, it just more matters, is he gonna get the ball enough?
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying, just to stress, it's J.J. McCarthy has all the tools to be an NFL quarterback, clearly. It's just a matter of if he translates.
Right.
Yeah, but now coming in at number 4, we have Lions receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra is a PPR monster and racks up targets and receptions like crazy in that Lions offense. And kind of similar to Gibbs, I think the main point that we're going to say about Amon-Ra is the departure of Johnson, and that's going to play a big role in that offense. There's ultimately going to be a couple question marks as to how that offense is, but I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is still a phenomenal slot receiver. He's going to just keep getting those targets over the middle of the field, and Jared Goff loves him for good reason, and he's going to continue doing that.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to bring up about Amon-Ra is that it feels like he gets a lot of tight window catches, which makes me a little nervous because Goff sometimes just throws him into the fire. Like there's the hospital pass term. Amon-Ra catches a good amount of those, just as many as other receivers. So I get a little worried because obviously like Jameson Williams is your big play receiver there. I get a little worried about some of the balls that Jared Goff throws to Amon-Ra because obviously if you're a receiver, you're catching what's thrown to you, right? But I get a little nervous about the quality of balls sometimes that Amon-Ra gets. Obviously, unbelievable receiver, very talented. I think there's a clear step below like Jamar Chase and Jefferson, but still a really good player. And ultimately, he's a great grab in fantasy.
When it comes to fantasy, it also depends who you're playing against for those players. The Lions have the 3rd hardest schedule in all of the National Football League. Through the first 8 weeks of the season, their 2 hardest opponents, based off strength of schedule from a year ago, are the Cleveland Browns, who will probably still be terrible, and the Chicago Bears, who have changed a lot in that locker room, and a lot of people are very high on going into this season. And then just when you look at that division defensively have made improvements all around. And when Matt's talking about those hospital passes, like when you look at the team located here in Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers, we saw Edrin Cooper, what he was able to do. He's a guy that can be a really top-of-the-end linebacker, and when you're throwing those hospital passes over the field, he's a guy that will light you up. So that's what can – and then just scheme doesn't change a lot when it comes to offensive coordinator change unless they're coming from outside the organization. But it's just like, is it going to click? And I think I'm more concerned when it comes to scheme change with Amon-Ra as a receiver and creating plays for him than I am with Jahmyr Gibbs, just because Gibbs, you can just run the ball, and as long as the offensive line is doing their job. Where it comes to as a receiver, you're going to want to create plays for him, and I'm kind of interested to see how Detroit's going to do that with the mastermind of Ben Johnson going south to Chicago.
I will say about the injury concerns to Amon-Ra, I think his build specifically, because he's built very different compared to other NFL receivers. And I think that he trains his core. I mean, his dad was, Mr. Whatever?
Strongest man in the world.
Yeah. Amon-Ra has great genes.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra has never really dealt with these injury issues. And while the Jared Goff polls are definitely a concern, I still think that Amon-Ra, especially with those hands, he has the strongest hands, probably the best hands in the league. And I think that's going to continue to show. And I think that even if some of those balls can be a little questionable, even if Amon-Ra St. Brown may get hit and banged up a little bit by those hits, Amon-Ra's got the grit to just continue and power through and play through. And that's just kind of the Lions' culture. And I think that's going to shine through more than anything. And now finally at number 5, we have Nico Collins. A personal favorite of mine. Collins showed out last season with 1,000 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns. And my favorite thing about Nico Collins is that chemistry with CJ Stroud. I think that they have an absurd chemistry, and the only thing that could be concerning is maybe the lack of weapons. I mean, it's kind of similar to Calvin Ridley in the sense of we don't really know what we're getting out of the weapons in that Texans offense, especially in that run game, and that offense did fall off last year. It's also those injuries for Nico Collins, but if he's healthy, his upside is absurd. He was top 3 in fantasy point per game when he was healthy last year.
Yeah, and let's not forget Houston-wise. I think people are totally forgetting this. Their star offensive coordinator, Bobby Sloak, was fired after last season. We really don't know offensively what's going to happen with Houston. That is a very big question mark. They got a big test versus the Rams, which I'm so excited to watch that game because that's going to be a real chess match in that game. But Collins, with that against that young Rams defense to start the season, I think that's a must start. He's a guy that Stroud knows he's comfortable with, and throughout the season, when you're a young quarterback coming off a sophomore slump like Stroud does, and we know what Stroud can do. He did it at Ohio State. He did it in his rookie year. If it wasn't for Jayden Daniels, we'd have the greatest rookie season in the history of the National Football League. And he had a little bad season last year, but I think Nico is really going to be that security blanket and come up huge for that Houston Texans offense.
Yeah, I've been a big Nico Collins non-believer for a while. Honestly, I don't know. I just never saw the appeal. I know he's a physical specimen. He's really good. I'm now a believer after just watching him perform last year and what he did. Really good player. And Stroud's a great thrower of the football. I'm really high on CJ Stroud. So I just think Nico Collins is a guy, if he plays a fully healthy season this year, I think you could see him being wide receiver 1 at the end of the day. I really do. I'm that high on him. I think he's that talented. And I think he's just really slept on because of where he plays and how the Texans have kind of been under the radar at times. So I think he has wide receiver 1 potential throughout the entire league.
And another thing, it's in the AFC South. Not necessarily the most impressive division. I expect the Texans to win that division and, just dominate overall. I expect some big games for Nico Collins this season.
Well, the fantasy season has basically already started, so we wish you the best of luck in all of your fantasy season.
And don't worry, Golden Eagle Sports will be back to its normal programming very soon.
For Matt Baltz and Adrian Fraga, I'm Brian Wilson. Good night, Marquette.